thanks to all the people who have contributed towards this presentation. So there is myself. I've been developing the diving skills for photogrammetry, but that really has come up on the shoulders of some other people who have organised events. They have organised pilot studies, and they have done inspirational work. So the first people that I'd like to acknowledge here are the Arts and Humanities Research Council. They paid a significant grant back in 2017 for us to run the pilot photogrammetry course. That was organised by Dr. Claire Fitzsimmons. I've also partnered up with Simon Brown, who has done great work by himself as a photographer and has produced some models which I'll refer to here. And he assists on the courses as an expert. The other people who have contributed are Kieran Hatton here in the UK. He also teaches this course, and Bob Anderson, and we have a volunteer diver, Marcus Blatchford, whose work we will also see later on as an example of the amazing stuff that you can do with photogrammetry. So that's really the people who've contributed to this, need acknowledging. During this talk, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about photogrammetry, what it is, what the work process is, what we can do with it as divers. It's a really, really exciting subject area. But first of all, I think it's interesting to sort of review how I've come into this. I started off as a marine biologist. I got interested in video. I think it's fair to say that stills have never really been my strong point. I've just not got my head in the zone for still photography. Video is good. It moves. I could capture a moment. But then when I was shown photogrammetry for the first time, it was like a light bulb coming on. Suddenly we've got this thing that can orientate and move around. We've got control of what we're looking at. And after that, video was really on the back burner. So that caught me. And it also fed into the communication that I've done in the past with non-divers. And this is a really cool tool for bringing the excitement of underwater objects, of exploration, back to other audiences who are non-divers. And so I think it really contributes into the message that we as divers can bring back from our explorations and to the wider world. So it's got a nice angle there as well. Anyway, we should move down and have a look at what exactly is photogrammetry. Well, what we're aiming to do is take a bunch of 2D images, and we can create navigable models. So we can, by comparing the 2D images to each other, we can reconstruct the three-dimensional object which we were looking at when we took those still photographic frames. We can create navigable models, we can make incredibly detailed depth maps, and we can get a lot of information. So to wet your whistle initially, I'm just going to ping along to, not that one, there we go. Okay, so this is some content from Simon Brown. He undertook to map the Thistlegorm. Thistlegorm is a very famous wreck in the Red Sea, and it's popular with all kinds of divers, lots of holes, lots of things inside. It's a subject of a sort of Jacques Cousteau expedition. And here it is, lying on the seabed. Now, as part of his work, Simon mapped the entire thing. And what we've got as a result, and he did an iBook on this as well as part of his work with this university, is we end up with a navigable model which we can move around. This is holds 1 and 2, and you can see here that we can slide around and have a look for all sorts of things. You can go in, you can measure stuff, you can count things, you can look at what you didn't see the first time around, or stuff that you missed on the dive, set objectives for revisiting the dive, and of course you can represent detail to experts who can't dive as well. So it's the way of bringing this home. And these are all the things that he has mapped on the Thistlegorm. Now, this is actually another output from that project. This is an author photo. Blow that up for you here. Now, what we have here is the famous railway engine which has come out of it. We have got the wreck here, and we can go into quite a phenomenal level of detail. And if I slide down this way, then I think in the lower bottom corner, actually have, I think they're down here, should be two divers. Go. Here are two divers, and that gives you some idea of the scale of the wreck. Now, at the high end of photogrammetry, we could measure this wreck, and we can compare its length measured on the seabed to possibly manufacturers, builders' drawings, and we can confirm things. We could look at the state of decay. That's certainly been proposed for the truck wrecks as well. But as a flavour of what we can do with it, this, I think, is a really excellent example of what we could do with underwater photogrammetry. It's one of the early standout projects, and other wrecks in the UK that have had the same treatment are the Royal Oak, the notable war loss tragedy at the start of the Second World War, HMS Vanguard, the Lusitania has been scanned. There are various enterprises in truck, and there's some really high-end science going on. Okay, so back to our presentation. So there's the Thistlegorm. That should wet your whistle for what we're actually trying to attempt to do here. But the origins of photogrammetry go back an awful lot further. This is a technique which the earliest reference I could find to it was in the Scientific Monthly 1943. And this referred to its use with aerial reconnaissance. This is a picture from the BBC from some RAF reconnaissance. And this is the centre of Cologne in Germany in the Second World War. And this illustrates the 2D nature of reconnaissance. But what the planners want to do is they want to assess what's happened, and they want to look at the height of remaining buildings. So we need to reconstruct three-dimensional data from this. And of course, as we go into the Cold War, I'm sure that America, Russia, Britain, everyone else, high-level overflight, and then looking at what launch facilities or items of interest the intelligence service is going for. So there's one use, which is quite old, really. So it's a very mature technology, or a mature mathematical technique. Now, the other application is very much for forensics. So here we have a very delicate skull object. This is actually a reconstruction of the Duke of Sippan. Now, these were scanned, they were put together, and eventually they used this model to reconstruct what his face might have looked like. The other aspect for forensics is it's now being used for car crashes, to measure skid marks. You could use it for crime scenes. You could reconstruct ballistics, very precise measurement. And really what we're getting down to now is something like 0.2 of a millimeter per pixel, which gives you an idea of what we can do with it. And whether we can reproduce that level of detail underwater is, of course, a challenge for us as divers. So we've got forensics, we have archaeology. We examine delicate scanned objects without handling them, or we could scan them in situ, bring the data back for land-based non-diving experts, so we can get a brief from them, take our diving skills back, investigation. In terms of science, it's being used for coral reef growth, for tsunami damage, for sponge growth rates in the Antarctica, and also for communication. Down here at the bottom, we have a plane in 3 sections. This is at the lake that I'm a manager for, and this is used for diver orientation. So we've included this model to our website, and if I just click back off, this is Marcus Blatchford, who has taken it upon himself to scan many of the things at Bobster Key. He's been a busy chap. This is Bobster Key itself. So we can see we've got a surface view from a drone here. And it'll be along in a moment. It's quite a big model, this one. You can see where things are at the surface once it loads. Here we are. Up comes the detail. And we can navigate around. Now, the surface of the water doesn't scan so well, but you could look at this, get the general arrangement, see where things are going to be. We have a shallow area, a training pool, deeper areas. Inside those deeper areas, we have things like an old Sea King helicopter sunk in the lake for diver interest. So it's a classic inland site. Here we have it. And if we can talk to divers about this, this is a means of introducing them to the hazards, the possible swim through, the condition, briefing. We're going to take the surprise out of it. And by doing that, don't reinvent the wheel in our minds, we may be able to continue our explorations, not necessarily of a sunk helicopter, but of a dive site where people have only rarely been. If we would look at one of his other models here, this is some of the old quarry heritage. And we've had quite a lot of interest from people who used to work in the quarry, who are now very interested to see their old workplace brought back into view, really. And with this viewer, Sketchfab, there are many models on Sketchfab. You can navigate around. You can, like, do up close, you slide, you scan. You can really investigate it, and we could really improve diver briefings with this tool. So that's what we've done. That is one of those applications. Now, okay, so how do we go about creating these 3D models? What is the process that we can use to get from us as divers, we're seeing things, all the way through to producing models that we can then show to other people and that we can navigate? Well, it is, of course, through the use of some very clever software. First of all, we need to acquire some stills. We need to use some software that we can acquire by downloading. There is Agisoft, Metashape, there's Photoscan. There are a number of different sorts of software. And really, I've been familiar with Photoscan and its successor Metashape in the projects that I've done. You can see here, we have a whole bunch of still photographs, all of which overlap in some way. And what the software does is it uses these to produce a dense cloud. Now, I'm just going to nip back to Metashape itself, and I'm going to show you how those stages work. I'm not going to do it live because it involves quite a lot of processing power. But if we go back to our cloud, you can see here we've got a whole bunch of images down at the bottom here. These are the ones which I have acquired from my stills camera or from my video. I have then asked this, go to work, and to create points from them all where it can find common points in 1, 2, 3, or 4 images, and then to work out how those all link up. So we end up with a shape made entirely out of points. And there's a bit of extra rough data in here. We go in really, really close. You can see here, look, that solid consists simply of dots. it's like a kind of 3D newsprint. Already you can see that there's a shape there. Now, I've used this model because this was done on a 45-minute demo with an instructor in Malta. These are some ribs from the wreck of the HMS Mari at the entrance to the Grand Harbour in Valletta. And we just went in with a GoPro, acquired 5-10 minutes of stills, 5 minutes of video, sorry. We broke it down into stills and we let Metashape go to work. And the reason I put this in and not a super high-res stills camera thing is because the application for photogrammetry for me is what we can do with citizen divers. Now, not everybody has a £5,000, $10,000 camera rig. They don't have a $15,000 light rig. This was done with a paralens, so a handheld camera, some basic sort of $800 lighting, and you can have results back. You get people going. They can contribute to this communication project with tools that every diver could carry on their dives. And I think if we have a whole army of people out there bringing back these stories and linking them together, then our teamwork as a diving community will be of great use for science, archaeologists, all kinds of people. So this is what you can do with simple stuff. It's pretty ground level. If we go up to viewing the actual model, so we could look at it as a solid, we could look at it as a wireframe, so we can see where all of those points have been joined up to create triangles. And those of you who love a bit of maths will know how flexible things made out of triangles are. And you can see here, this is a step further forward. So this is our point turned into a mesh. This is our surface. And then the last step is to allow the texture from the diving video to map back onto that surface, give us something that makes sense to our non-diving comrades and people. So there you go. That is what that cloud of point can turn into. We've got ripples on the seabed. I think it's managed to edit out the odd stray fish that was going past. But we've got some quite cool detail in terms of what's happened to this object over time. And this is from relatively low-res video. This is just a GoPro or a paralens. If you take it, what you DSLRs, big lighting rigs, then we really gain a level of forensic interrogation, which is more useful to scientists. So horses for courses. What do you want your model to do? And that is really what's going on with this process here. Now, the still that I've got here sort of shows us generating the dense cloud. It says it's 10% done. There's 30 minutes left in this section. It is possible to capture enough data to make these green bars run for days and days and days. And certainly any photogrammer who has done even the smallest amount of photogrammetry will be well aware that they can get really compelling. You're going to look in at green bars. What's it going to be? Seeing that cloud emerge out of nowhere, and then you know if your video or your stills were good, is quite addictive. Really what you want to do is hit batch process, have a nightcap, go to bed. Wake up in the morning, and it's a bit like Christmas Day. You open it up, and you discover either pin-sharp image that reminds you of your dive, or this gigantic blob of melted ice cream because you got your imaging wrong, or you underestimated what you were doing with your data, and it still says, "Bye, diver. You've got another day to wait." So there's lots of refinement in how we achieve photogrammetry models inside our intention span. But if you're successful, you get a 3D mesh, you apply the texture, we then have a 3D model upload for public scrutiny. I showed you that on Sketchfab just now. Or we could take it out and into various game engines, into 3D object handlers, join it together, and that could creative, or it could be interpretive. There are a lot of potential possibilities. Or we can take it all the way back to an incredibly detailed orthomosaic, which I showed you for the thistlegorm. And if you want an idea of the flexibility of that, of course, what Simon has done is he printed it onto a jigsaw, which is really quite hard. It's got thousands of pieces, and I haven't quite completed my version of that yet, but I will let you know. So we can take a rec, we can take a site, we can make a model, and then we can turn it into something like a jigsaw. The possibilities for this are really, really huge, quite exciting. So decide what you want to do, decide what story you want to tell, and probably photogrammetry has got a thing in there for you. Now, just to make sense of that process, which I've sort of zipped through there, let's have a quick look at this. So our key imaging principles that we want is we want our images to overlap. We have to have points that we can find in 1, 2, or 3 or more images. So we look at this here. This is a concrete block, and I use this on photogrammetry courses at Foster Key. What it does is it allows us to judge student performance, or my performance, on several different levels. If we take some photographs, there are 3 here, the software will link them together, and with luck, it will make a cube. If we've done it well, it will make a cube with a dent in each side where these holes are. And if we have done it really well, then we will end up with a model where you can see through these holes in the middle, right the way through to the other side. And that's the mark of good photogrammetry data survey. We're looking from above here. We want to see that our photographs have somewhere in the region of 60 to 70% overlap if we're going to allow the software to tie the points together. And what that software does is it will identify this corner here as being the same as this corner here, as being the same as this corner here. And then it will look for some other points, and it will identify this, same as this, and the same as this. And then it will say, well, okay, this can only be true if these points all belong to a shape like this. And magically, out comes something which looks like what you've got. If you don't have this overlap, then the software ends up having to interpolate things that it doesn't know. And that's where you get weird distortions and bends and not quite such satisfactory shapes coming in. Crucial to making the most of this overlap is no shadows. So we need very even lighting. And we're going to come on to the challenges of this underwater, because of course, lighting underwater is a biggie. And we need good coverage. We don't want to end up with just one face of our block, because we want to be able to see all the way around it. So we have to go all the way around it. There's no magic button that fills in the gaps for us, unfortunately. So we do have to be very clear and purposeful about how we take our visual assets for photogrammetry. Okay, so with that really, really, really brief intro in mind, hopefully everybody's got the gist of what we're going to try and achieve when we go diving. Diving is what we want to do. What you generally find, and certainly during lockdown, we've run a few photogrammetry lockdown workshops, is that all the divers who were interested have now modelled bits of their garden, they've modelled things on their kitchen table, they've modelled their pets, being children, their favourite dive gear, whimsical things on their mantelpiece, something in the park, their bike, a compressor, all kinds of things. And there are now been all sorts of models going along. We've been judging them. We've had a bit of fun. It's been good fun. All that surface practice is really solidly useful, because when we take it all underwater, we have to stick together our imaging knowledge with our diving knowledge. And here we go for diving. So, I have a couple of divers. This was taken during the pilot course in 2017. It's the second year that we had run something for divers, took part in a sort of an initial have-a-go session in 2016. 2017, we lit the touch paper around the first course, and after that, we created materials we could then use for courses in, I think the next one ran in early 2019, and we've run it 4 times in the last year. So it's been very popular, Bob's Key. Our underwater photogrammetry. Well, the objective is to bring back good photographic data. However, we need to do it safely, because no data is worth an accident. There are many photographers who tell us about preoccupation. They could tell us about time they so involved in their science, their creativity, they forgot to monitor their gas. And in fact, Simon Brown ended up with insufficient gas for his accumulated decompression while inside the Thistlegorm. Now, he made it through that one. He ended up decompressing on the shot line. He saw a bunch of divers go in while he was there. So he'd gone diving in the morning, first wave of divers. They'd all disappeared, and he'd been on the wreck photogrammetering around. He had then ascended as the second wave of divers went in from the Liverpool, and he was still decompressing with a slightly more pressing gas situation when they all ascended from their dive and got back on the boat. Eventually, he got back on the boat with some gas remaining and learned a valuable lesson from it. So no data is worth an accident. We put some planning into it. And these are the kinds of objectives for the photogrammetry course. We introduce people to photogrammetry, preferably using a high-end expert like Simon Brown, and then I provide the in-water guidance, feedback and briefing, safe diving practices that we bring together to ensure that our divers can operate as teams, using all the good diving common sense that we already have embedded in us from our training. So really, we need to focus on the opportunity. Preparation is the key. If we have a limited window underwater for this, we're limited by tide, gas, weather, season, human endurance, if it's cold water, all those things, then we need to make the most of it. And by focusing on preparation, we stand more of a chance of completing that sequence of survey and getting a good result. You certainly don't want to be involved in a survey whereby we have a team who are aiming to image a large area, and then you're the person who's broken fin strap. It means you can't dive. That means the team is out. That means a chunk of data is out. So we're gonna go back to principles that we've embedded in all our divers as good practice. And having been an IANTD technical diver for 20 years, I found it very easy to put this on top of the platform that we routinely build, and I think as IANTD very proud of, in the divers that we train and the instructors that train to train the divers. You know, the whole pyramid is set up well in IANTD and our standards to add this exciting new ability on the top. So here we go, photogrammetry and good diving practice. Now, a planning template that I use really for all diving is to work out the gas that we need, gear that we need, skills to operate that gear, the physical fitness that we need to make good on all of this. So, for example, twin sets, switching back for shutdowns. Can't do that if we haven't got gas management, that side mount. We're looking at swimming endurance, so for photogrammetry, and we're also looking for the mental focus to have a task, complete that task, to maintain good diving communication among our team at all times. We're looking to rig our gear so that we don't impair life support gear, so bailout and rebreathers, backup regulators on open circuit. All of that will be accessible. You can't just go plonking a rig that could be a yard wide on top of your diving gear, then impair the safety triangle or access to cutting tools, bailout for your mates, that kind of thing. Another common tool which is used in photogrammetry for big projects is a DPV, and of course we don't want to end up with a key function being a problem because we've now got dangling camera leashes and things that cause issues. So we need to make sure that we're tuned up and in the game. And I find this template helps us not really miss out or accidentally forget important items. Rehearse it through in this way, then we'll get a good result. We get a rewarding project. Everybody gets more enthusiastic. If we don't do that, and we have some glitches and niggles, everyone gets less enthusiastic, and that's sometimes a sad story of diving ventures. So good planning, break it down into these different areas, and then what we're looking for again underwater is we're looking for our overlapping coverage of the object, looking for clean, sharp, evenly lit images. Now this really comes down to the amount of light that we can deploy. I haven't touched on whether we should be doing or could be doing still or video at this moment, but whatever you're using, you need lots of light. And what we've got here is an Orca light umbilical. I think this is a 25,000 lumen light. It is beautifully illuminating this scene here, not just for the photogrammetry diver who is surveying a bit of Scapa Flow scrap site wreckage here. Now, we chose this as the venue for our topic because it was off the beaten track in Scapa Flow. Scapa Flow is famous as the home of the German fleet, sunk after on Armistice Day in 1919, 100-year anniversary this year. Also not sunk on Armistice Day, sunk on the 21st of June in 1919, instead of surrendering. Many of the hulls were then salvaged, a colossal amount of steel, but what they did was they chopped away all of the masts, spotting tops, many aspects of superstructure, and they dumped them on the side of an island underwater, and they now make a fascinating scrapyard. Rummage in there, you can find iris searchlights, you can find all sorts of signalling things, colossal lifting gear for the ship's pinnace, which could be quite sizable boats in their own regard on a German battle cruiser. So that's what we're up to here, investigating something here, and it's formed part of a study by the Orkney Diving Archaeology Unit as part of their underwater heritage after that as well. So a diver, lots of light, got our target, we've got some onboard lighting as well, so that's one objective. We also manage distractions and task loading. We could be swimming along doing beautiful photogrammetry, we could have one of those diving problems comes into the equation, and so we need to deal with that if it threatens our safety, but then we need to go back to where we started, where we got distracted, and continue our survey so that we don't end up with a hole in our data. Task loading can distract us from things like team coherence. It could distract us from monitoring our gas. So we need to think about that as well. And really, this comes back to good dive conduct and asking yourself, question, can I effect a rescue at any point? Am I quite happy to drop my $1 million camera rig and rescue my buddy? We won't ask for a hands up on that one. But really, we all know what the answer should be. So we're trying to put these diving operations together, make sure that those two things come together. And ultimately, what we want to do is, for planning our dive, get info on our target. Now, I've put this image up here because this was part of the 2016 project. This project aimed to introduce people, including myself, to the principles of photogrammetry, to explore some techniques for how we as recreational and sport divers could use them, some of the pitfalls, to build up some small models during the week, and then to survey something meaningful at the end of the week. This was that target. I'm going to come back to this a bit later on, at the end of it as well. So, we have this wreck, which a couple of divers from the Orkney Archaeology Unit have confirmed is a wreck. We know it's in 30 meters of water, don't know what the wreck is, and we have a couple of still images And so we set out to image this wreck using photogrammetry, and this is the result of one dive. And I'll come back to the model later on, talk you through various bits. So we need info on our target. Where is it? What depth is it? How long is it? We need to rehearse this route. Visualization is vastly important here. And a dry walkthrough with your buddies to make sure that you know where they're going to go, how we're going to turn, how we're not going to lose light in a particular area. And also to talk about the maneuvering skills we need. Now, that's a hot topic of discussion, because if you put a post up on the internet about what's an appropriate standard for buoyancy, control, and trim, then it's like lighting the touch paper and standing well clear. Valid discussion for photogrammetry, though, because we need to image all the parts of this wreck. We need to not just swim along beautifully flat, pointing our camera sideways. We need to get underneath things, get around things, get into spaces. And that means that we need to be fully agile and able to really swim in any orientation at all, upside down, sideways, helicopter turns. We need to not be able to disturb our target, because there's no point imaging something then cover in sediment, and deploy quite a lot of imagination to get someone with a camera and someone with a light into all these areas to maintain our photographic data. So rehearsal, practice, diving with a buddy, maneuvering skill. We need to be a lot more imaginative than just straightforward flat trim, but we need to bring the standard of cave divers and scientists. So we could discuss that all night long if we wanted to. But I've got a sort of rule of thumb which I used many years ago in scientific diving, that we've got orientation, we could be in a current. Really, the only contact we should be allowed is what we could do gently, one finger on something solid. And that's an okay starting point for photogrammetry. Ideally, you want to be super, super slick. And also, if we're using video, super, super slow. Those of you that use video will know the rule of thumb that get in the water, go as slow as you think you need to go half as slow again, maybe halve it again. And for photogrammetry, if we're going to get those still images nice and crisp, those still frames to project from the video, we need to go slower again. If we rush it, things get blurred, you don't get good data. So there's some examples here of divers who have both onboard and offboard lighting. So this is a little thing about whether we want to, how we're going to achieve that even lighting. And of course, the wider the angle we have, fewer shadows we have. But for really wide angle lighting, we need a buddy, and that means we have good buddy skills. Some people prefer to simply use a camera with wide arms and kind of swim along more by themselves, maybe with a safety buddy, but that doesn't really involve divers. And I'm a firm believer that diving is a team sport. You know, we're in it together, we're working together, everyone should have a role. And in fact, interestingly, if we look down here at these divers, and they've got a bit of onboard lighting and also what we call angel lighting, comes in from the top, tend to find the person in charge of this route around the wreck is not this diver with a camera, but it's this diver, angel lighting. Now, if you talk to people who routinely operate in this way, I'm thinking of Carrie Hittinen and Chris Rowland, very, very famous, very capable, able, expert photogrammers, then they acknowledge that they swap the roles around and that the angel lighting character here, he's the one who determines the route. So we've got a task-loaded diver here who's looking down his viewfinder very intently, possibly distracted, possibly with less situational awareness. We've got this geezer up here, great big lights. He's got great situational awareness. He can see where this chap's going. He can light up the path. He can make sure that on one run going one way, we could come back and achieve overlap going the other way. Well, so the lighting guy, or diver, sorry, is really the person who's the unsung hero in this equation. This person, camera operator, and just a sort of swimming along with it, they're not as important as they think they are. And here we have a team again on the stern of the V83. This is a destroyer pulled up on the beach in Scapa Flow. We chose this because the depth here is kind of 15 meters. It goes up to within about 6 meters of the surface. It has a gun on top. And we decided to see if we could divide the stern of the wreck into 4, make 4 models, and whether we could mesh them all together to have some final team output. Now, this was with people that at the start of the week hadn't done any photogrammetry. But by the end of the week, so 5 days diving, we were able to stitch these together and produce a basic model of the stern of the wreck. Now, we came up against some interesting phenomena here. The top of the wreck has wavy kelp on it, and that wavy kelp, of course, keeps changing position, so it confuses data. We also had a very slight current running over the top, which made it quite hard to maintain that even data coverage. And most of the team are also using rebreathers for endurance purposes and controlling a rebreather loop from, say, 6, 8, 9 meters back up again as we maneuvered around this 3D complex object. Really challenged the divers to put their rebreather control right into auto mode in terms of loop management and still be able to focus on the imaging purpose of the dive. I was really pleased to see that everybody did that and everybody gave okays at the end of each run. Everybody was monitoring gas, taking a break, maintaining good safe dive practice. So that week was a success, and you can see how nicely they look maneuvering around. These are photographs from Bob Anderson. And it is, in fact, Bob Anderson who is in this short video here. And he's operating into a very slight current, camera, onboard lighting, and he's imaging this wheel. Now, this is actually a pulley wheel of, I think, a pinnace. The pinnace is one of the service boats of a British or a German battleship. Back here we have the engine block. Most of the hull has rotted away. And we can see the current is significant here. So up into the current, drift backwards, position, and rerun, get these overlapping swathes. This again is in about 12 meters water depth. So quite deliberate, well-practiced buoyancy control is good. Easy for this to be ignored. There's a memorable story from one course I was teaching recently, whereby the lighting dude was very, very keen not to interrupt the camera guy. The camera guy is making a beautiful job of scanning up and down this wreck in Bobsity, and I was looking at them. Okay, it's going well, but now the lighting guy's gone up a little bit and his feet have come up. Now, he normally dives CCR. CCR is in for service, diving a single cylinder for this, and it's not quite his natural habitat. So his feet start to come up, his dry suit fills, at which point the camera guy gives him an okay from underneath. He doesn't look up. The lighting guy is now fully upside down. He's so keen to say, yep, let's not interrupt this, that he vigorously swims downwards against the buoyancy of the dry suit to give an okay to this guy, at which point we stopped it, pointed out that we need to kind of be nice and stable as opposed to near perfect vertical inverted trim. And the next time they set off, they looked like this. It was absolutely beautiful. So we've made a change in that diver, and he sort of took the debrief in really good sport. He's a lovely guy, but it's an example of how things run away when you're task loaded. We want to avoid that while we're doing photogrammetry. So what have we got next? Well, we've covered sort of lighting. We know what our objectives are. I did this talk recently for some example, looking at whether we could use video for it. I've said before, this is really where I'm quite excited by all of this. And this is some output which shows the variation you get from different lighting and video. Now, these are all on my Sketchfab online, which I'll pop back to in a moment. But the idea is here that we had this little piece of pinnace hull, picked a small target as the trial, and we wanted to see what differences might occur when you give different people a camera. So if these fast or slow, things get blurred. Give someone else the lighting, the color change here, where the lighting is further away or closer in here. And we can see the value with just setting up some fixed lighting here. And one of the telling things about this is the construction of this hull. Now I'm just going to nip back off to a browser and have a look at Sketchfab, find my models, and down here we have these bits of pinnace hull. Now this makes a bit more sense than a 2D image, and I think another demonstration of the power of communication here. So here's what I was just showing you, and here is our detail on the hull. Now these pinnace, they live on the deck of battleships. They have a wooden construction in the hull, and of course wood in the sun on the deck of a battleship shrinks. It can start to leak. The boat isn't very much use. And in the olden days, what they used to do was fill the boats with water. Well, this boat's got an engine in it, so it obviously can't sit there all day full of water. So what they did was they had a sandwiched hull, and they've got hull breaks going one way, and then if you could see me on the camera, I'll be showing you the sort of overlapping construction here. So we've got the hull planks going one way in one layer. We've got some canvas in between, and then we've got hull planks going the other way in the next layer. So we kind of said, well, can we see this on all the video? Can we see underneath? So have we got down our buoyancy skills to get in there without causing too much sediment? And is it a nice, is it a nice even color? Is it a nice even color indicating that our lighting was consistent throughout? So these are all our objectives. These were our learning points. There is one model there. Here's another model from another diver right here. And we can see that it's a bit greener. There is our same view. And it's not quite as well defined. This diver hasn't got that 3D survey underneath things, going around things that stick out, definition, and topographical resolution is what we want. So that hasn't worked quite so well, but of course, got really valuable feedback here for them to have a go on the next time. And this, just for completion, is the third diver in the equation. So pretty good job, some resolution here, but what we can see creeping into this model are these black spaces, and that is where didn't have enough overlap to complete the point cloud, and therefore the mesh that joined up, and therefore having a surface imprint back onto. So that is another feedback point that we get from models. So it's great fun, but everyone gets very enthusiastic about learning and improving. Can't wait to get back in the water. It's all brilliant, really. Super. And while we're here, I'll just pull shorts here, have a good chuckle around at this. This is the cave dig that we're both involved in on the Mendips. This is dry caving here. This is trying to remove stuff, go into a new section of passage. And this particular thing is, there's a kind of an upside down view. Sort of didn't orientate brilliantly. What we had was a very small hole you could just get your head through, and we were trying to work out what would happen if we tried to enlarge it. So we poked our head through and immediately saw all of these rocks hanging down above our heads, which was pretty scary. And so we decided that maybe we'd go somewhere else. And by using one of our team's cameras. We poked it through, blatted off a load of images, and then they magically stitched back together into a model which showed us these muddy rocks in the Rockall which were about to fall on us. As a result, we spent a year digging the wrong way, only to come back and carefully brace up this Rockall and discover so far about 150 metres of new cave, which on Mendip, quite considerable, but if you put it in Florida terms, sounds pitiful. Anyway, that's my Sunday evenings. It's a lot of fun. One of the other applications is also this one here. We have a sort of marine biology citizen science survey project going on. And last summer we went out to dive an area of overfalls in the English Channel. So it's the south of the UK, and we went out to dive a reef. Now this is of interest because when the North Sea broke through into the English Channel, of course it caused a huge scour in the English Channel, and this is in that area. So we've got a chalk bed overlaid, and they wanted a survey done for this area. Now everybody else, seriously, got to dive a lovely reef that day, and whereas I got to dive something which looks very much like the car park of the dive centre that I manage. So you can imagine my disappointment that it's one of my days out when I'm not teaching and I'm indulging my passion for science, and I see a kind of a bryozoa thing, and I think I've also got to see a starfish. Oops. There we go. Sliding. Starfish is in there somewhere. Great moment. And the rest of the time I got to see gravel. So that was my survey results. A little bit disappointing. But by being able to bring this back and show it to people, reduce the error in human sketching, which is a skill all by itself. So several different applications for photogrammetry there. Hop back. So that's sort of how we can examine and improve our techniques with feedback. What we've got left? Planning. So we'll come back to that. We know what we want to achieve now. We can define our route length around our target. We can work out the gas that we need. We can look at decompression and contingency. We can look at fitting OKs into this project. Then we can deliver a briefing. As you can see here, I'm delivering an excellent briefing, and everyone else is paying attention to something off to the right. So going brilliantly. But we did have a good, successful dive. It was all good fun. This guy has cropped up on loads of projects now, and he gets amazing results out of his little GoPro Hero 3 with a couple of lights. But he's actually produced some better models than pro-level people with $15,000 rigs. And back to our example of our unknown target that I showed you the model from. This is the model with the camera view enabled. So what I showed you just now of that drifter that we found in Scapa Flow that we wanted to identify, this is our dive route around it. We came around the side, we went back over the top, got overlap, and we planned that because the wreck was 30 meters long by 6 meters wide, so kind of like 90 to 100 feet by about 25 feet wide, had that data, knew our scan width was 2 meters, we could do 6 passes, we had to swim at 6 meters per minute. It's that slow. So 5 minutes per pass, 30 minutes bottom time, depth is around about 30 meters. We put a sensible END for task loading in. We didn't just pick air or nitrox. We went for just a tweak of helium to give us that extra attention detail. We were limited by the open circuit dive with twin sevens, 40-minute max bottom time, rule of thirds, good dive practice. And we started the actual ascent at 36 minutes. So super, we estimated that one well. And they gave us the 2/3 gone indication on the ascent just before the deco. So this was an example of how we can pick a task, we can plan our resources for that task, execute the task, and of course, the result is back. There we go. This is the model we want. This is what we got. And I've picked this as opposed to a much shinier example Simon would have, because this is what a team of 3 photogrammetry novices were able to achieve, good planning, paying attention, after 4 days of photogrammetry diving. We see that this is in fact a drifter class, so a general kind of workboat for Scapa Flow. We can see that we've got rudder here, upstream engine room, funnel has fallen in. We have the bridge leaning over here. We have a rather curious array of squirrely debris on the bow here, and it turned out that this was in fact a whole bunch of cable that had been dumped on top of it at a later date by chance, and it's been completely colonized by tritium, by anemones, which makes photogrammetry quite hard because it's waving around. But there we go. We can now identify this, we can bring back information, and of course we have stuff to learn because every dive is a learning dive. We swapped our roles around here. So somebody had the camera on swathe 1 and 2, someone else on swathe 2 and 3, someone else on swathe 5 and 6. And when you weren't using the camera, you had the lighting. So whoever had the lighting here was a bit far away. Whoever had the lighting here was spot on, but now the camera work has slightly missed areas of the wreck. So if we wanted to define a brief for a follow-up dive, these would be the areas that we target, we turn to them, collect the data, move our model, and the world will carry on turning, be a better place. We'll be happy photogrammers. Now, we still don't know what this wreck is, and I'm just going to zero in on this thing here. This is the funnel. What we can see is we've got a rough shape of it here. It's not very good, not in too many images. We've got some fittings and we've got some dots along it here, which are actually the hole or the bolt studs that hold the letters of the ship onto the funnel. So it is HMS something. And if I can say how charters go. Sorry, I had all those lined up very, very neatly and I've been spoiled highly. This is a high-res survey of that funnel, so we can take our GoPro divers and put them alongside our detailed high-res divers. And by looking at this model here, they were able to reconstruct what letters would have been attached to these mounting points. Now remember, these were just tiny little white raised dots in our other model, but this is what led to the identification of the drifter as HMS Chance. So by bringing back this really detailed record, we can fill in those gaps. We can identify a ship from features rather than having to go all around and find the bell or rub the verdigris off the nameplate or something. And just as an example of the detail we could get, this is a little solitary hard coral. You can find marine biologist once, because I'm only partly interested in metal. I quite like these guys. A little solitary cup corals. We don't have coral in the UK, but these are in the same family as hard coral. They have a little stony cup. The animal lives in the cup, and it has a ring of tentacles. With this kind of survey done at distant stills, we can identify these down to almost species level, really. We could certainly do a count. We could work out the colonization. We could do all those things that scientists love doing. Got some coralline algae growing here. You know, the wreck tells several stories. You know, there's the story of the wreck. There's the story of the sinking. And then there's the story of the colonization and the decay and the change after. So if you like lots of stories on one dive, then photogrammetry is. So we'll continue back to our example there. That was our very successful pilot dive. Super exciting to watch that grow out of all our data. And just a couple of things to remember when we get back on land. We might be all excited. We might be buzzing to get in the computer and see what's going to come out. But we need to maintain our discipline to look after our data. We've expended a lot of resource, a lot of time, a lot of effort, valuable dive day for this. So we need to make sure that managing that is a priority. Make sure that we got what we meant to get, didn't somehow hit off when we meant to hit on and get crossed up, and the video therefore not be as good as it could be. If we're doing a multiple team project, we need a central store with consistent labeling. If possible, we need to preserve EXIF data on lens type, aperture. Digital cameras can tell us a huge amount about how the photograph was taken, and Metashape and Photoscan, the photogrammetry software, can use all that data, work out what corrections or idiosyncrasies a lens might have. We can use it to calibrate an image. We can use it to increase accuracy and stitching of those images together. We need to look at extracting stills from the video carefully to make sure that you don't get blurred frames, get the nice sharp ones in the middle. If we've got video that's made up of 25 to 30 frames per second, then our human brain will stitch all of that together into a sharp image. But if you look into that, and you look at an individual frame, then you could have a load of blurred frames. Can't make models out of blurred frames. You want the sharp ones. So we haven't even got into the debate about stills versus video. Broadly speaking, I find stills more thoughtful take. It's very easy to collect a lot of data while videoing, and really both are valid ways, but both have their drawbacks. So we'll leave that there for tonight, and we'll continue that debate online. Bigger, maybe. Get into a huge pickle over that. But they're both good. So look after your data. And that kind of brings me to the end of what I wanted to say as an introduction to photogrammetry. We've talked about what it is. I've highlighted some exciting projects that I've been involved in, some projects that inspired me to develop my own abilities, and ultimately to join forces with some other people, write the manual for photogrammetry and develop student courses, and in time, instructor level training as well. I hope that you found that quite exciting. It is an IANTD speciality course. There currently are 2 instructors in the UK. I think we'd like to plan for some wider ability beyond that. But in the meantime, I hope I've inspired you to try it out, dive safe, and of course, if you want to get in touch, here's my email address right here. So I hope that we're still online somewhere.
Daniel, asking what software do you use to analyze photos?
Okie dokie. I'll just nip up to the chat. There we go. Okay. Cool. Excellent. Sound is perfect. Good. I was worried about that. Do you ever capture photos with use of DPV on large recs? Yes. This is what Marcus does. And if I just ping back to 2 seconds. You're still sharing the screen, I hope. Right, I'm just going to try and find his. Yes, here we go, the Polynesian. So this is a lovely rec of Malta. Let's click optimistically on the high resolution model. Now we've just had super fast broadband installed here, so this is a bit of an unexpected pleasure. And what Marcus does is he's got his camera, stills camera, on the front of the DPV. He's got the settings and the lighting nailed. I need to go for the low res one. Jammed it. And he fires off 1 frame per second, and he's got his cruising speed entirely matched to that. He gets excellent results. All round truck dragoon in association with Pete Mesley, and you can see here this is one dive. This ship was a mine loss. I think the Second World War, actually. It's in 60 meters of water, so time is at a premium here. And the shot normally comes in here. The bow is in about 60. The stern is in kind of 65, edging towards 70 down the slope here. And you can see the detail that Marcus has managed to capture on his one dive. So quite a phenomenal amount of stuff. Now there's all kinds of things about the Polynesian. There's some lovely plates which are around inside here. You're not allowed to take anything. You get seriously told off by the Malta Antiquities people. But you can look and see things, and that was working very nicely at the moment. So there's your demo of what is possible with a DPV. KC, how do you scale and measure objects that you've captured? What we need is something that we know the size of in the middle. And there are a number of different ways of doing it. And Simon Brown is the guy that has really taken this to a forensic level. What he's got is some very careful shapes that he puts in his image, and he can then refer back to these later on, scale from them, so he knows exactly what size they are, and they're quite carefully designed to give him an image that he needs to scale from. And so he can measure between them, he can extrapolate across the model, and if you've got those in the model, reference. What we've done recently was we got in touch with US in Finland, and we tried comparing an acoustic diver positioning system with the model. So we had our diver positions from the acoustic system. We had the divers using a camera and also a ruggedized iPad underwater. And we were able to compare those two techniques, and they were out by like 20 centimeters over 50 meters, which is pretty awesome. On land, get down to really, really fine detail. So detailed enough that instead of taking, say, 300 GPS positions at a road incident, you could photogrammetry the whole site much faster, get the road open, get it cleared away, and then come back later on to interrogate that in depth with the legal teams and go along with that. So there we go. So what software do we use? I used Photoscan to start with, Metashape as a development. There are updates. I think they are pretty European mathematical geniuses put that all together. But really, it's trigonometry done an imaginable number of times very fast by a computer. So just what they're for, really. Anybody else got?
Like the helicopter that you show, how long it took to complete that project? You know, how many times, how many dives in hours?
I would say that was probably one dive, about 20 minutes. And then the processing for that was probably 5 hours, I would say. But the processing really is just a question of clicking on the workflow items and finding out if your data from the dive was good. So you can capture a lot of data really fast. On the course, we want feedback for students within half an hour. So we limit them to very small areas and interrogate that kind of data coverage. Because then we can do an intro in the morning, we can do a dive in the afternoon, we can do a dry photogrammetry session, we can do a dive on the same object but underwater in the afternoon, and then come back and fix it or do something more exciting on the second day. So small objects, keep them turning around.
And was I asking, what 3D software do you use in post-production?
I am yet to really get heavily into this. This was going to be one of my lockdown projects, was to extend my use of photogrammetry and model building into things like a game engine, for example. So I'm aware that you can export it as, if I just click back here, we might be able to find models. You can have all kinds of things you can export it into. So I think here's your choice of file formats. I'll let you pick the one that you like best. But if you can put it into .obj or .3ds, then you can import it into all kinds of things that handle 3D objects, and you can then change the lighting. You can do all sorts of things, and the advantage with that is if the advantage with that is kind of something that is like what was achieved on the Antikythera mechanism. Now, the Antikythera mechanism is this incredible device with amazing, accurate, sort of 2,000-year-old engineering, and it was found on a wreck in the Mediterranean off Antikythera. Thought to be involved in that wreck, and it's been examined over the years to work out what it would calculate. And one of the techniques that they eventually used was to put a dome over it with many, many lights inside it, and to flicker the lights across so that they lit it from all kinds of different angles. High-res photo, they then discovered engravings which they could then interpret to determine exactly what it was for. Now, with photogrammetry, do that in a virtual sense, which is much, much cooler, because you don't have to handle the object itself. It's not quite as easy. Yeah, game engine like Unity 3D, I reckon you're well away with that. So, yeah, fill your boots. If anybody wants to know stuff in the meantime, then just get in touch. I'm always keen to talk about photogrammetry. A great pleasure. Thanks very much.